What's good, YouTube? This is Boxingwave, and we are back with another fight breakdown this weekend, January 25th, Saturday, about 8 p.m. Eastern on dazn. Diego Pacheco is going to be facing off against Steven Nelson. Okay, I should be covering this fight live, but I'll let you guys know. You guys will see it as soon as I post up the notification for it. Pretty good fight for both. A lot of people are saying a step up fight for both. I think that Diego Pacheco has been in there a little bit tougher than Steve Nelson. Okay, I know he's young. He's 23 years old. Steve Nelson is 36 years old. They have roughly around the same amount of fights. Pacheco has 22 fights with 18 knockouts, no losses, no draws. And Steve Nelson has about 20 fights with 16 knockouts, no losses, no draws. Okay. But Steve Nelson started a little bit late. I was watching a video of him speaking about it. Started boxing in the military. Okay. Been fighting pro since 2016. Started off kind of fast, but hasn't been the most active fighter over the last 4 or 5 years. He's been fighting roughly about once a year and hasn't really stepped up in the opposition. This is definitely his step up fight. Excuse me. Pacheco, he's been in there with Shalecki. Shalecki was his last win, and I think Sean McCallman, I'm sorry, which is where I based a lot of my film study for this fight on that fight specifically. All right, Diego Pacheco has the height advantage, 6'4", reach advantage as well, about 79-inch reach, whereas Steve Nelson is about 5'10", short, stockier guy with a shorter reach, about 75 inches in reach. All right, but like I said, I did some film study on both. I watched some of their fights before. I've been paying attention to Steve Nelson for a little bit. I know he's part of Terrence Crawford's camp. He is also from Omaha, Nebraska, and he's been training with Bomac. All right, so those are one of the things. Those are definitely key things you got to look at in this fight. The camp, he's in a very, very good camp with Bud and Shakur Stevenson and so he's very close to those guys, and you gotta take that into account because I think Bomac is one of the best trainers out there, and I think he and his team is one of the best strategists out there going into a fight, and it's been proven by several fighters. So with that being said, um, as far as the styles, Diego Pacheco, tall, lanky, a really, really tall guy for the division at 168. Rangy guy, has a big right hand. That's the right hand that is putting a lot of fighters to sleep. He's shown to me and been proven to me to be the bigger puncher between the two, at a little bit higher level. All right. Once he gets that full extension on that right hand, he can knock you out. He's very dangerous with that shot. Sometimes I do believe he overextends. Sometimes, you can just tell that he wants to land that one shot, but he has other tools. He does have a good lead left hook. He has a very good uppercut, especially with guys like Steven Nelson, who's going to be shorter and who's going to be looking to get on the inside and be more physical on the inside. If you're coming straight in recklessly, especially with your head down, you can run right into an uppercut. So Nelson has to be very cautious of that one shot. All right, but I was looking at the McCollman fight. I rewatched that fight because I think that was the most difficult fight for Diego Pacheco to date. It was a pretty competitive, close fight, and McCollman, who is shorter but has a long reach. I don't know what McCollman's reach was exactly, but you can look at him in a fight to see how long his arms were. And even though he wasn't nearly as tall as Pacheco, he was good at fighting a really rangy fight, and he was very comfortable, and he was good with timing and fighting on the back foot. He's a different type of fighter than Steven Nelson. He's more twitchy. I think he's also a little bit quicker. And I just think overall he's more of a better counter puncher. He's better at drawing fighters in and having them walk into some clean shots. Steven Nelson's a little different. He's more of a calculated pressure fighter type of guy, not extremely high volume but he's more of a guy that's going to feign a lot. He's going to change level. He's going to be probing, with that lead hand. Um, and he has a good bounce. You know what I mean? He's going to get in. He's good at working the body. He's a worker. You know what I mean? I don't think he has a monstrous right hand or anything like that. I don't think he's flashy at all. He's more of a worker. He's more of a technician. He kind of reminds me somewhat of like a Sergey Deverenchenko type of fighter. You know what I mean? Who's gonna come in? He's gonna throw his combinations, and he's gonna just press you. He wants to get in on you because he doesn't have the longest reach. He's not really that tall. So being that he's so much shorter, and I've seen a face off between him and Diego Pacheco, there's a huge height advantage there. And Diego Pacheco knows how to use his height. I just think that there are some defensive flaws, especially when fights kind of turn into like a dog fight and he's exchanging, because he's like a KO artist. Being that he has that kind of style, sometimes he can be a little bit reckless. I mean, he's only 23 years old. He likes to fight. He likes to brawl. And sometimes you can catch him with a good shot in between the exchanges. And I'm thinking that's what Bomac and team Steven Nelson is going to be looking forward to do. But I expect Steven Nelson to close the gap between those two, be a lot more physical on the inside, try to smother Diego Pacheco's offense, and just do the better work on the inside. Now, look, I don't believe either one of these guys has been involved in a 12-round fight that went 12 rounds. I know Pacheco went the distance with McCollman and winning that 10-round fight. I know Steven Nelson, who, I did some film study on him. I mainly focused on the Rowdy Montgomery fight because Rowdy was, a tall, lanky guy that tried to keep the fight on the outside for the most part, but had moments where he was backing up Steven Nelson a little bit, had moments on the inside where he was outworking him on the inside, but mainly Steven Nelson clearly still won that fight as well. But when you look at the difference between McCollman and Selecki, those two guys right there is levels above the people that Steven Nelson has fought. And being at his age, and I know he's 36 years old, that could play a role in the fight when we get closer down the line, down in that. If we get to the 6th, 7th, 8th rounds, where things, I believe, if it gets there, it will become more of a dogfight between the two. That age gap might play a role against Steven Nelson because he's fighting someone that's young, that's fresh, that likes to trade on the inside, and he's good at shortening. Like Diego Pacheco's really, really good at shortening up his shots on the inside. Again, that uppercut through the guard of Steven Nelson, who will probably be fighting at a high guard at some point. Those are the key things which can get Pacheco to win this fight. I know a lot of people are not expecting much, but one thing about Steven Nelson, and I brought up his camp, is that they're really strategic. And there's a lot of unknowns with Steven Nelson going into this fight. I can't sleep on him. I do think Diego Pacheco should definitely be the favorite. He is the favorite to win this fight. He's the ASI. He's all of that. He's the up-and-coming star. But there's a lot of unknowns about Steven Nelson. There's a lot of unknowns out there, and it's really tough to tell what he can really do at this level. He's gonna have to show it in this fight, and he's gonna have to show us things that we haven't seen. Because based on what I've seen from him, I do believe that Diego Pacheco is a better fighter. You know what I mean? Regardless of what kind of fight this turns into, if this is an outside fight, I'm leaning towards Diego Pacheco. If this is an inside fight, I think Nelson has a better shot and would have more success on the inside. But it doesn't necessarily mean that he's better than Diego Pacheco on the inside neither, because again, he could be explosive. If I'm talking about Nelson, he could be explosive at times, but I don't know if he has the power to really neutralize Diego Pacheco, especially like the way McCollman did. Like McCollman did a lot of tricky, crafty, old school, even dirty tactics when he was fighting Pacheco, and it definitely made the fight more competitive because of that. When you're lunging in at times with your head and tying up, you're throwing your 1-2 and then you're lunging in to make sure Diego doesn't counter you. You're smothering his offense. You're doing these shoulder bumps that are illegal. That I believe that you could have had a point taken away from him. I'm not saying Steven has to do those kind of tactics in order to win the fight, but he has to have some kind of craftiness to him in this fight here. And I believe he's capable of that. But I'm gonna have to see it in order to believe it. One thing for you gamblers out there, I know a lot of people are expecting Diego Pacheco to get this knockout. You got to be careful for putting the bet and placing a bet on a knockout and a KO, because we don't know how durable Nelson is. And even if Nelson is losing on the cards, you got to understand that, excuse me, if he has good survival tactics, if he's able to smother Pacheco's offense, even if he's losing a fight, you never know. This could be one of the ones that can go to the cards again. So you have to be very, very cautious with that. As far as Nelson winning, I do believe I can't see Nelson just beating him on the cards. That's the least likely. I can see Diego winning on points. I can see Diego winning by stoppage, overwhelming Nelson, not with one punch really, but like just overwhelming him with just an onslaught of punches. I can see Nelson outworking Diego, attacking the body, moving, stabbing him to the body, you know what I mean? Throw those combinations to the body, wearing him down, and possibly, hurting him and with a big shot. But I can't see Steven completely outworking him to a point where he wins on the cards. I think even if it's close, I still got Diego winning. And I hate to say this, but even if it is close, Diego's a young guy. He's a star. He's the one with the name right now. And he's the one that they're pushing to be the next big thing. Worst case scenario, if this fight is close or competitive, or even if the viewers think that Nelson might be edging the fight, I think Diego Pacheco is going to win this fight if it has to go to the cards. I think Nelson needs to do a lot, and he has to fight to get the stoppage. No, I don't think he should come out reckless. All right, I think the fight is going to start out. I think they're both going to have a lot of respect for each other. I think it's going to be a very tactical fight in the first 5 rounds. This is a 12-round fight. So I would say the first 5, 6, maybe the first 3 or 4 rounds, I think it's going to be very tactical. Nelson is going to be probing. He's going to be fading. He's going to be shooting that jab, and he's going to come in at times and go to the body. Pacheco can move well, but he doesn't have the quickest feet. So I think Nelson will be able to at times to close the gap. But Nelson, and I seen him in fights, he can't come straight in. He's going to have to use his angles. He has to move lateral a little bit in this fight. He can't just walk straight in with his head down at times, because he's going to get caught with an uppercut on his way in. He has to be careful. Diego Pacheco has some decent reflexes. He has good timing. And even though sometimes it looks like he's desperately trying to land the right hand, he still has other weapons. So I have Diego Pacheco winning this fight. I'm not completely sure and certain that he wins by stoppage. I think if he does win by stoppage, it will be in the 8th round or in the championship rounds, where Steven Nelson, I believe, will probably start fading, because I think even at 36, I know he doesn't have a lot of miles as far as boxing. It's really just his age. He doesn't have a lot of miles or anything like that. I still believe that it might be a factor in those later rounds. But again, a lot of unknowns with this guy. What can he really do? How durable is he? How much of a survivor will he be? But at the end of the day, I gotta go with Pacheco, and it just, to me, I think I know people are looking at it and saying things like Nelson is step up for Pacheco. I think Pacheco's already had a couple of step ups against fighters at this level before Nelson. Nelson is a lot of unknowns, right? But at the end of the day, I got Pacheco winning this one, whether it's by decision, whether by knockout. I'm not certain about my bet, where I'm going to place a bet. If I do place it, I'll probably put it in my stories on my Instagram account like I normally do. But right now, pretty certain, I'm pretty sure that Diego Pacheco is going to pull this one out, right? There is a possibility of an upset, but I'm not expecting it. All right, so that's my prediction. Please subscribe to the channel, and I will see you guys on a live coverage on Saturday. Should be a good fight. I'll see you guys later. Peace.